Greetings, mortals! It is I, Remortis, and today we are back into Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 8 with another build! This time with probably my least favorite of the paladins. But nonetheless, we are going to try our best to make a build. That is the Oath of the Crown Paladin. A defender of the crown, I guess? Well, really, they're all about tanking, and tanking in D&D doesn't really work as it does in other games. But it does have some tools to help mitigate some damage from your allies, but then also you get a pretty sweet list of spells from your paladin spellbook. Most of these draw from the cleric, so you kind of get a mix of being a cleric while still in the chassis of a paladin. So in this video, we're going to kind of go over some ways that we can try to get the most out of this Oath of the Crown Paladin. That really exemplifies the tankiness and keeping your teammates alive. Whether it's reducing the damage they take, taking the damage for them, or perhaps leaning into that even further and making your enemies more likely to hit you, and then which will end up doing more damage to them. Thanks to abilities such as Armor of Agathis from the Warlock spell list. So surprise, surprise, we're probably going to take a dip into Warlock. Alright, enough of this yapping, let's just get right into the video, shall we? I do want to caveat, though, that this is more of a theory craft and build guide. I'm not really going to go too far in depth in terms of items. There's so many other guides for that. And I will mention some of the items you might want to keep an eye out for here and there. I'm not really going to name anything in the end game because to me, I don't really care about the end game in terms of building guides. Because really, it's the first 1 to 9 levels that are the hardest part of the game, so to speak. By the time you hit Act 3, you kind of already have an idea of what you're doing with your build. And I want to help you guys get to the end game, especially in honor mode. So keep that in mind as you are watching the guide. All right, hope you guys enjoy. But before we begin, I do want to caveat. Everything here presented to you now is during the Patch 8 playtest. Therefore, anything is subject to change, whether it might be a future patch or when the patch finally goes live. So some of this guide might not still be intact. But I feel like mostly the fundamentals of the guide should still be future-proof, so to speak. So with that in mind, let's just jump right into the quick guide. For the quick guide of this build, I'm going to go over a few different multi-class options, and I'll give you some of the quick reasonings, and then we'll go on to level 1 for the build for this video. Alright, so essentially, at least 7 levels of Oath of the Crown Paladin to get your lovely crown goodies, such as getting your channel oath abilities as well as your unique level 7 feature to take the damage in place of somebody else. So you can either go 7 levels of paladin or 8 to get another feat, or 9 so you can get your level 3 paladin spells, which includes Spirit Guardians, which is easily one of the best cleric spells in the game. Granted, we get at level 9 here, which is kind of in the late game, end of Act 2, early Act 3. Obviously you can get this by being 5 levels of cleric. So in that sense, perhaps you might go 7 levels of Paladin and 5 levels of Cleric. Another route to go is a dip into Warlock, which will allow you to acquire the Armor of Agathis spell, which is fantastic for this type of build because they want to get hit. And if you have ways to give yourself resistances, you essentially double the temporary hit points granted from Armor of Agathis. So you get double your temporary hit points, and then anytime they smack you, you smack them with cold damage right to their face. And really, there's so many other ways you can go. You can go with Paladin, you can go with Fighter. Really, the decision's up to you, but if you really want to play the Oath of the Crown Paladin, I highly suggest playing at least 7 levels of it, and then that's when you can decide to multi-class into something else. One other thing I want to note for this quick guide before we dive into the rest of the build is that depending on how you want to play this character, whether you want to be pure support or you want to play kind of more of a traditional Paladin, will determine what kind of how you want to build this for your stats. If you want to be more of a supportive and just put all your points into Charisma, I highly suggest taking a level of Hexblade really early into the game, whether it's level 2 or level 1. I really suggest picking your Hexblade Warlock level, probably level 2. That way, level 1 you start off with your plate armor still. And level 2 you pick up Hexblade, and then that way you can utilize Charisma-based attacks. Or you can also just utilize Strength Potions. But whether you're chugging potions or using the Hexblade Warlock, either way you can dump your Strength stat, meaning only putting taking no points into strength and having it at 8, and putting it all into constitution and charisma, with at least a dexterity of 14. So that way you get your maximum dexterity bonus from your armor, since we're wearing heavy armor, and then you get your +2 initiative from just having a 14 dexterity. However, if you are playing this character as your main character, you must realize that if you decide to go the route with Auntie Ethel and take her hag hair, you will most likely break your oath, which will make you an oath breaker and kind of ruin this build. So maybe aim to have your stats at 17 with the idea of either taking Tavern Brawler or some other, or Resilient to boost your constitution up to an even number. And then charisma, same thing. Maybe you might consider taking Actor to get that half feat, to also get your charisma to an even number. Anyways, here I am yapping during this quick guide, so I apologize for that. So yeah, that's the quick guide. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away in the comments. So now, with the quick guide out of the way, let's look at our level 1. How do we want to build this guy? And as I mentioned in the quick guide, which I'll kind of recap here, depending on how you want to play your paladin kind of determines how you want to do your starting stats. Before we even look at races or anything like that, let's go ahead and just look right into stats. So, if you want to be a traditional paladin, you probably would go with the spread, something like... So if you wanted to play a more traditional paladin, this would probably be what your stat spread would look like. 16 in strength, 16 in charisma, 12 in dexterity, 14 in constitution. Sure, this will work just fine, and you won't have too many problems here. Obviously, our mental stats are a little bit low. However, once we hit level 6 in our paladin, we'll be able to get our saving throw aura, which will boost all those saving throws by our charisma bonus. So this is a standard paladin spread. But for the crown specifically, we may consider being more of a supportive role and rather than being smacking things with a big sword. We can still smack things, sure, but we have other ways to do that. We can utilize our charisma and dip into a level of Hexblade, in which case we can also dump our strength, because we'll be using charisma-based attacks. We'll go ahead and slap this over into Constitution. Okay, so if you wanted to go with a Warlock dip, whether at level 2 or whenever it is, here, let's go ahead and make our class a Paladin as well. So depending on if we want to... Oh, why did it change our... Okay, there we go. Alright, so depending on how we want to build our Paladin, so if we wanted to utilize Charisma, whether it's the Hexblade dip, so if we wanted to utilize a charisma-based build with the Hexblade dip at level 2 or so, this would probably be the stat spread you would go with. 14 Dex, 16 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, or 17 Charisma. If you do plan on utilizing the Tavern Brawler feat, perhaps consider going into a spread such as this. The 17 Constitution, 16 Charisma, 14 Dex, 10 Wisdom. Why do we have such a high Constitution? Well, we want more hit points, and that way it will also allow us to maintain our concentration. You can also keep it like this whether using Tavern Brawler or not, to be fair, because we can pick up the feat called Resilience Constitution, which will increase our Constitution by 1 and also give us Constitution-based saving, or a bonus to our Constitution-based saving throws, such as Concentration. So that will be sitting at a nice 18 Constitution and be able to withstand more punishment and perhaps maintain concentration on our spells, which is really important. We have a lot of powerful concentrated spells as a Crown Paladin. So, another thing to consider as well is using strength potions. I know many people are kind of skeptical or on the fence about using it. I feel probably like 50-50. Some people like using strength potions, some people don't. Whatever camp you're in, this is probably a fairly good spread to have for your Oath of Crown Paladin. 14 Dexterity will give us a little more initiative, although only 12 of that will give us extra AC, because most likely we'll be wearing heavy armor. Again, the Constitution at 17 is going to be fantastic, whether you go Tavern Brawler or with Resilient Constitution. That way you can bump that up to 18, get all those extra juicy hit points, as well as getting those the bonus to concentration saves you do Resilient Constitution. 8 Intelligence doesn't matter. We're stupid here. We know smart, we protect. Wisdom, neutral. It's not super bad to have it this low, especially since we're going to have our aura later to help compensate for that. And then Charisma, obviously we want to be more supportive, maybe be the party face of the group. We want our Charisma to be pretty high, as well as if we dip into that Hexblade Warlock, which I highly suggest, we'll be able to use our charisma for our attacks. Otherwise, chug those strength potions and forget all about Hexblade at all. If you didn't want to be Hexblade. But nonetheless, I think this is a pretty good spread for our level 1, both of the Crown Paladin. Whether you decide to chug potions or go Hexblade. But without all that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at what races we want to play as. So no matter what kind of paladin you want to play as, I highly encourage people playing orcs, because paladins love to critically strike, and so do half-orcs. But that's not the focus of the Crown Paladin, so it doesn't really matter. Honestly, play whatever race you desire. I think the one I would probably end up choosing would be the Golden Dwarf, since we get Dwarven Toughness to get that little bit of extra HP. In which case I would highly encourage picking the Toughness feat at some point to get even more HP on top of that. But again, as I mentioned, really doesn't matter what race you decide to play your character as. They're all going to be good here. Maybe play that race that you never would have played because you didn't think it was an optimal for the build. The Crown of the Paladin doesn't really care about being the star of the show. They're here to protect your friends. They're here to protect your lovers. Or whoever it is you're playing with. Most likely a duo partner, because, come on, who really has time or social skills to get more than 2 friends on at the same time, right? It's a schedule, to be fair, but we'll chalk it up to my bad social skills, that I can't get more than 1 person to play with me at a time. But anyways, I digress. Whether it's 2, 3, 4 players with you, or even, I don't think the Crown by itself is really worth it, so you need at least 1 person with you, whether it's an NPC or your friend. But whether it's 2, 3, 4, Crown Paladin can help protect them, and also gives you a different playstyle for your Paladin. Be more supportive, kind of like a Cleric, I guess. I'm sure some people say, why not play a Cleric? Well, Clerics can't smite, now can they? Granted, this tabard we have, it looks kind of goofy. But some people like it, I suppose. Alright, I digress. Pick whatever background you so desire if you're playing as Tav. Otherwise, you can play as the Dark Urge, or really any character for this matter. But I think if I were to choose a specific character to play as, it'd probably be the Gold Dwarf, simply for the fact that we get a little bit of extra hit points. Otherwise, you know your boy here loves Dwergar, and really any of these other classes or races will be just fine. Play what you desire at the end of the day. Who cares? Don't let some weirdo on the internet tell you what to do. So anyways, as I'm telling you what to do, let's go to level 2 now. I'll see you in a moment. So moving on to level 2, we're going to be using this character as we level up. This is a character we have at endgame, thanks to Cameron from our Discord for submitting this save file for me to utilize. All my other save files are either in honor mode or don't have some of the options available to me because I was a naughty boy. But nonetheless, let's continue on to level 2. Alright, so at level 2, this is when we get to pick a fighting style. Typically, I like to go for defense, no matter what kind of paladin I'm playing. Just get the extra armor class is always nice to have. Great weapon fighting can be pretty nice as well, to help you reroll some of your low attack rolls, but it's not super crazy. That's at least not as good as Savage Attacker anyways. Dueling can be really good too if you plan on using a sword and shield the entire game, and you can get a little bit more extra damage on your one-handed weapon. Or we can use Protection. In any other build, I probably would not recommend using it because it doesn't really get too much usage. But this is actually be a build I'm thinking of, like how can we really protect our teammates? And well, just by simply having a shield on, we impose disadvantage on anybody who's attacking any of our allies within 1.5 meters. So that's pretty sweet. Nothing crazy. I mean, obviously doing a little more damage from your one-hander might be a little more useful, as well as the AC, but imposing disadvantage on your allies, or just being next to you, is pretty cool. So, we'll go with that. So, honestly, how often are you actually using it? As for your spells, it doesn't really matter what you pick here because you can always switch them as you please in between combat. However, for this themed build, we're going to prioritize things like Compelled Duel here, which is kind of like a taunt. You impose disadvantage on a target. Heroism, so you can potentially give yourself a little bit more temporary hit points and also make an ally or yourself immune to Frightened. Which could be pretty useful, especially useful on certain fights in Act 2, if you know what I mean. And then you can go with the Cure Wounds, or you can go with Shield of Faith, or Bless, whatever you really desire. Again, you can switch it as you desire. We're just going to go with Bless here. Oh, this character would also, I should also note that this character would be a very, very good candidate for Falar Aluve, so just something to keep in mind. Also, we get our smites, but we already knew that. We're paladins. Alright, at level 3, we get our 2 Oath of the Crown features. Turn the Tide here, which we can spend an Oath charge to heal our party for 5 to 10 hit points as a bonus action. Not too shabby. It has a 9-meter radius. And then Champion Challenge. And then we also have Champion Challenge, which is like an AoE taunt. Or in D&D terms, we impose disadvantage on everybody that isn't you, so they're more likely to try to attack you. Then we always have Compel, Duel, and Command on demand, which is pretty sweet. So we can utilize our other spells as we see fit. Command can be pretty useful, especially for some disarming shenanigans, or just making an enemy useless by just making them go prone every turn. And then Compel Duel, I've never really utilized it, but maybe this would be time to try it out. And then we'll go with Shield of Faith here, and let's do Divine Favor. Why not? Buff up our allies a little bit more damage. Okay, so now here is where things also get a little interesting in terms of feats. So as you can see, the current stat spread on this specific character is 16 Strength, 16 Con, 14 Charisma. Now, you can completely forgo Strength on this character because it's playing more of a supportive role. Therefore, maybe attacking things is not necessarily your priority, and defending is. Which is why we'd use things like Falar Aluve and kind of be more of a support type character. In which case, we could consider raising our strength if we wanted to still be able to hit things reliably. Although we could always use strength potions to use that. Or we can also multi-class into something later to use our charisma instead of our strength. But let's look at some feats right here. Besides increasing our strength, we could either increase our constitution through the ways of, just simply increasing it. We can take resilience. We can also decide to pick resilient, in particular in constitution, so that way we can increase our constitution by 1, and then we'll have proficiency in constitution saving throws, which paladins normally do not have. Which will essentially means we get a higher chance to maintain concentration whenever we're hit. Which is pretty important, because we're going to have some pretty solid concentrated spells here. And then, if you do plan on picking Resilient at some point on this character, you could consider making your Constitution at 15 instead of a 16 off the get-go. Of course, there's other ways to increase your Constitution through feats such as Tavern Brawler, so perhaps you still intend on using high strength, or maybe you decide to use strength potions. Tavern Brawler will allow you to increase your Constitution as well, so perhaps you can plan things around that way. And then some other ones that you might consider is Shield Master. I feel like this would be a pretty solid character to use it on. You gain a +2 dexterity saving throw while wielding a shield, and if a spell forces you to make a dexterity saving throw, such as say somebody uses a fireball or typically an AoE spell, you can use reaction to shield yourself and diminish the effect. On a failed saving throw, you only take half damage, and on a successful one, you shrug it off. Pretty sweet, and honestly, I would never really consider this feat in any other build, except this one. So, something to consider. Alternatively, if you don't want to use a sword and shield, you could easily use a polearm type build, in which case I would recommend picking Sentinel and Polearm Master, giving even more incentive for enemies to attack you. Because even if they do attack your allies, not only are you imposing disadvantage on them, but you would also be able to get attack opportunities against them and such. In either case, you could still use a shield with this feat combination as well, because a spear will count as a polearm for the Polearm Master feat, and you can use that with a shield. As much flack as I give the Oath of Crown Paladin, it actually kind of opens the door for taking feats that you normally wouldn't pick, or whether maybe it's not as optimal or you're just going to really see a build fitting with it. Alternatively, you can also pick up Tough, just have straight up more hit points, which is always nice. But Shield Master, Polearm Master, Sentinel, Resilient Constitution, those are probably the ones I would suggest picking. Oh, as well as Heavy Armor Master, but that increases your strength. I wish this could increase your Constitution. That'd be really nice. But those are the feats I would recommend for this build. Obviously, pick what you desire. If you want to be a big, beefy two-handed guy, go ahead, pick up Great Weapon Master. And of course, I always usually recommend picking up your ability score improvements, but these are some other fun feats you could consider taking. So for the sake of this build right here, we're just going to take Shield Master. Try it out. Okay, at level 5 is where we get our extra attack, just as Paladins do. But then we get some oath spells in Warding Bond, which where we ward an ally. They will gain resistance to all damage, and a +1 armor and a +1 bonus to their armor class and saving throws. Each time the ally takes damage, you take the same amount. Pretty cool way to combo with a partner. And honestly, I think that's where this Paladin might shine. Perhaps you're playing with a friend, or a girlfriend, or a boyfriend, or perhaps a kid, or just somebody you really like, and it's just maybe just the two of you instead of doing a full party. That's when I would really consider picking up the Crown Paladin to kind of still be there and help support your friends so that they can do all the kinds of damage and you can protect them. Then we also get Spiritual Weapon, which I'm a big fan of. The only downside is that it doesn't really have much movement whenever it attacks. So it's still a fun little thing to have a little extra body to do a little bit of extra damage. And neither of these spells require concentration, so that is also something to consider. Moving on to level 6, we get our Paladin R to increase everyone's saving throws. Pretty sure it's based on your Charisma bonus. We'll confirm in a second. Sometimes Baldur's Gate 3 likes to make things a static number, but I'm pretty sure this is the case for... I'm pretty sure the Paladin aura here is based on your Charisma bonus, which is currently 14, so we're only getting a +2. Okay, and at Paladin level 7, this is the other defining feature of the Oath of the Crown Paladin. When an ally within 1.5 meters of you takes damage, you can use your reaction to spot that damage for you. Which, in the way the game works here, it'll heal your when the way that it works in the game, it basically heals your ally of that damage, and then you take that damage as radiant damage. So we're going to test in a moment to see if we can actually reduce that with a resistance to radiant. And that's Divine Allegiance. So that's also another reason why I think the protection fighting style would work really well here, because you're going to be try to be within that 1.5 meter radius. That way you can help reduce the damage or take the damage from them. Alright, moving on to level 8, we get another feat here. Obviously pick whatever you desire. Perhaps you want to do the Polearm Master Sentinel combo, or Polearm Master and Shield Master. Whatever you so desire. For the sake of this build here, I want to do some testing. We're going to increase our Charisma by 2 to double check some stuff here. And we move on to level 9, which is typically going to be the last level you pick for your Paladin. Rather, this is the last real level where we actually get something from the Oath of the Crown Paladin. And we get that with Warden of Vitality. Well, it's an aura spell that you can utilize that, and I don't think many people do. While this R lasts, you can cast Restore Vitality as a bonus action to heal yourself or your allies. Not too shabby. But then the real thing that we're looking at here is Spirit Guardian. This is the quintessential spell for any cleric, and we will get it as a paladin at level 9. Obviously, it is a bit late into the game, typically the end of Act 2 or early Act 3, but this is a fantastic ability to have. So who needs all that strength to attack with your weapon when you can just run around and slap people with little cherub angels or little Evo Necrod, whatever the hell those things are that are flying around. Bats, maybe? I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure the Spirit Guardians like little cherubs that are flying around. Anyways, I digress. Spirit Guardians is a fantastic ability to have, and you can just be really tanky and just whittle people down with this lovely ability. And then at this point in the build, and rather for this subclass, this is when you would consider multi-classing into something else. Really, I think the best breakpoints are probably level 7 of Oath of the Crown Paladin, level 8, or level 9, and then splitting off into something else that you so desire. Whether it be Bard, Warlock, Fighter, whatever it may be. The reason why you might consider dropping at 7, because you'll get your ability to help protect your allies, and then you can get 5 levels in another class, say Warlock, so you can get Hunger for Dar for some reason. Or perhaps even to go Cleric. Who knows? It's all up to you. But for the sake of this build, we're going to try to emphasize being tanky and trying to take damage to ourselves, and then see what we can do to maximize our efforts elsewhere. Alright, so that's 9 levels of the Crown Paladin. Now we're going to multi-class. And who would have thought? A Warlock. And who would have thought even further? The Hexblade, beyond that. Well, why is that? Really, I just wanted a one level dip in Warlock, mostly for the fact that we want to get Armor of Agathis, which is known to any Warlock, which is a fantastic ability for what we're trying to do here. We'll gain temporary hit points, and then whenever time we are dealt damage, we will deal cold damage back to them. And this can be upcasted quite considerably well. And then the fact that based on what gear you're wearing or other effects you might have applied to you, you could potentially have resistance to whatever damage you're taking, which essentially doubles the temporary hit points on your Armor of Agathis. Then the other reason why we're going to go with Hexblade here is simply so we can bind our weapon so we can utilize Charisma, which also opens up the build to maximize Charisma rather than Strength, and also you can put more points towards Constitution as well to get those hit points up as well. To get those hit points up too. As for your cantrips, go Booming Blade, and why not? We'll go with Booming Blade and Eldritch Blast, or you can go with anything really here. It's up to you at this point in the game. Maybe you want friends, just get those little extra dialogue checks, because you probably are going to be the face of the party with your high charisma. And the Eldritch Blast is Eldritch Blast. Come on now. Good, reliable attack. At this point in the game, you'll be shooting 3 beams. What's not to like? Okay, so even further, we could decide to finish out with another level of Warlock, maybe dip into Fighter, or we can go 2 levels into, or we can go 2 levels into Cleric. In which case, we would go... Oops. Alright, at level 11, this is where we can consider how we really want to finish out this character. Do we want to get another level of Warlock? That will open up getting Hex, as well as Arms of Adar if you really wanted that. But you be able to get your Eldritch Invocations, such as Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast, or perhaps you want Devil's Sight to get, Dark Vision through Magical Darkness. But Agonizing Blast would be able to weaponize your Charisma onto your Eldritch Blast if you so desire with that. In which case, this actually could be pretty cool if your partner or whoever your teammates are range characters. That way you can be right there next to them blasting people with Eldritch Blast, and then be in that 1.5 meter radius. So that's definitely a way to go. You can go 2 levels of Warlock, 3 levels of Warlock, whatever you desire here. Or you can go with 2 levels of Fighter. This will net us second wind to get a little bit of healing on ourselves. Whoop-de-doo. And then, but the second level of Fighter, more importantly, will allow us to get our actions, which will allow us to get our action surge. However, we also get another fighting style here, which we can take defense, dueling, or whatever it is that we feel is necessary for this build. Now, of course, alternatively, you can forego Warlock altogether and just do 3 levels of Bard. This could really help accentuate your party face abilities, as well as getting a few more skill checks, as well as getting a few more proficiencies in various skills, and other supporting abilities. Perhaps you want to go 3 levels into Bard for Swords Bard, or perhaps 3 levels into Lore Bard to get I guess not too much from level 3. At least from level 3 levels of Sword Bard, you can get your flourishes if you so desire, such as the Armored Flourish to get your extra AC there, whatever that's called. Defensive Flourish, that's what it is. Get your extra AC bonus and get a few extra attacks there. Honestly, at this point, the choice is yours. Personally, I'd probably end up going with 9 Paladin, 1 Warlock, and maybe some Bard. Although 2 levels of Bard isn't really anything to write home about. Maybe we go 11 levels in Paladin. Why not? Let's just do that. Make it simple and easy. We'll do 11 levels of Paladin, see what it gets us. Our 10th level of Paladin will give us Urge of Courage. You and nearby allies cannot be frightened. Now at level 11 we get Improved Divine Smite. A little bit of extra damage on our weapon attacks. Alright, well that's pretty much the build. Let's go test out some shenanigans and see if we can't resist that damage we take from defending our allies. I do want to mention that some quick gear, just really you can wear whatever you desire. There's some stuff in the early Act 1 that you might consider, such as the Helmet of Smiting, if it would show it for me. Whenever you use a smite on that has a condition, you can get temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier, which is okay, nothing crazy to write home about. But in particular, there is that ring that will cast Bless on people when you heal them, as well as the, I think it's gloves, that will also put Blade Ward on people whenever you heal them. So that could be a fun combo as well. Although that would also require you to really get some ways to get bonus action heals and utilize those. Alright, so one thing to consider, since we're a paladin, we don't have the highest spellcasting slot. So we can go ahead and use Armor of Agathis using our paladin spellcasting list, our spell slot. And here we are. We got Armor of Agathis. It's only 15 temporary hit points. So that gives another reason why you might consider picking Cleric or another spellcasting class to get a slightly higher spell slots. I believe you might be able to pull off 4th level spell slots if you go into Cleric. After looking at my calculator, you'd only have a 4th level spell slot if you have 3 levels of Cleric. So in that case, maybe you might consider doing 3 levels of Sorcerer, particularly with the Draconic one that will give you Armor of Agathis. Just even more ways to play your Paladin as you see fit. But anyways, either way, we got 15 temporary hit points here, and anytime anybody hits us, they'll be slapped with 15 cold damage. Which you obviously can combo with making people have the wet condition so that they take double damage from frost, or cold damage. Anyhow, what we're here for today is to reduce the damage of our allies, and see if we can't reduce the damage that we take ourselves. We're going to go ahead and chug this Radiant Resistance potion, so that we take less radiant damage. Alright, let's test this. We're just going to go ahead and fight some guards and see if we can't reduce the damage we take from our allies. Alright, so it looks like she's going to take 19 damage here. Is that 19? Yep, so she was hit for 19 damage. I'll go ahead and use this here. Oh, wow, look at that. Looks like we can reduce the damage that our allies can take. So we're going to go ahead and use our Turn the Tide here. Looks like at level 11, we'll do 15 to 20 healing here. And you know, let's go ahead and put Warding Bond on. Alright, so looks like protection is not automatic. I thought it was an automatic thing, but I guess it's a reaction. So protection still could be cool to use if you don't want to take damage, but you can impose disadvantage on them. They need 22 to hit, they hit to have 25, so we could impose disadvantage on them, but we're not going to do that. Alright, so let's just verify here. Jacelyn was hit for 21 slashing damage. We'll go ahead and do Divine Allegiance here. Yeah, we healed him for 22, and we only took 9 damage. Sweet. So, Radiant Resistance does reduce the damage that we will take in place of our allies. Good to know. Go ahead and cast our Spirit Guardian here. And let's heal our allies for while we're at it.
Need to act fast. A spasm grips your chest.
Broken your oath at the close of day.
Jeez.
We have much to.
So anyways, I think there is actual potential here for the Crown Paladin. After playing with it a little bit and messing around, being able to impose disadvantage with protection fighting stance is pretty neat, but it does cost a reaction. Same goes for transferring the health if they do take damage. But this is actually a pretty cool way so you can kind of play a different type of character archetype here, which isn't usually represented in D&D very well. The other good option, in my opinion, would probably be the Ancients Barbarian, but sadly that's not in the game just yet anyways. But for now, we can totally play as a paladin that tries to protect your friends, lovers, or allies, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, this guy is no longer that since I just broke my oath. But anyways,
Let's move.
hope you guys like this guide and maybe perhaps kind of hooked your brains a little to potentially make your Oath of the Crown Paladin. If you feel like you learned something, please like, comment, and subscribe for more guides like these. Or if you'd like, you could also join the Discord posted down below to Theorycraft Baldur's Gate 3 builds, Patch 8 builds, or really any game for that matter. Another big game on my horizon is V Rising coming up. Well, either way, my name is Remortis, and thank you so much for watching this video. And I hope to see you in the next one. Farewell for now.